Okay, so we are in Parshat Ki Tavo, which is always read 2 Shabbases prior to Rosh Hashanah. And the reason for that is because it has the Tochacha in it, the rebuke, and the Gemara says, Tichle Shana v'tichle kalaluteha, that the hope, the symbolism in that is that as the year comes to an end, we hope that all the curses and bad things of that year will come to an end as well. And certainly that resonates strongly this year with all that's been going on and continues to go on. Hopefully, it'll be a new year full of health and safety for everyone, and good decisions being made by those who make decisions. But I want to focus on a different piece of the parsha tonight, which is the description of this rather elaborate ritual of blesses and curses, which introduces the Tochacha. And the Torah gets very specific here. So we're in chapter 27 of Devarim. Vayetzav Moshe v'ziknei Yisrael et ha'am le'mor, Shamor et kol hamitzvah asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom. Moshe and the elders commanded the nation, saying, observe all the mitzvot that I am telling you today. V'haya bayom asher ta'avru et ha'yordain el eretz ha'aretz asher Hashem Elokecha noten lach, v'kimot lecha avanim gdolot v'sadeta otam basir. And the day in which you cross the Jordan into the land which God is giving to you, you shall erect large stones and plaster them. V'chatafta alehem et kol divrei haTorah hazot ba'avrecha, l'man asher tavo la'aretz asher Hashem Elokecha noten lecha eretz zvat chalav v'devash kasher divrei Hashem Elokecha Elokei votecha lach. And on these stones, which you're going to plaster, you should write all the words of the Torah as you cross through, in order that you will come to the land which God has flowing with milk and honey, which God promised to your forefathers. When you cross the Jordan, you should put these stones, which I'm commanding you today to prepare to make, on Mount Eival, and you shall plaster them with plaster. You should build a stone altar there, not made with any iron or metal. Avanim shleimot tivneh mizbach Hashem Elokecha va'aleita alav olot l'Hashem Elokecha. You should use only full stones, not cut, not manipulated in any way. When you build the altar, v'zavachta shlamim, and you should offer peace offerings. V'achalta sham v'samachta l'Hashem Elokecha. You'll eat them and you'll rejoice before God. You should write on the stones all the words of the Torah, a good explanation. Moshe and the priests and the Levites spoke to the entire nation, saying, pay attention, Israel, on this day you will become a nation to God. Should listen to follow God, hearken to God's voice, and do all of his commandments, all of his laws, which I'm commanding you today. Moshe commanded the nation on that day, saying, al har Griezim, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, Uvinyamin. The Eliam do ala kala bahar Eival ve'uvin Gad ba'asher is ruling Dan Naphtali. When you cross the Jordan and do this ritual, the following tribes will stand on Har Griezim: Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, and Binyamin. And the following will stand for the curses on Mount Eival, Reuvin, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. All right, so we have a rather rich description about what's going to happen as they cross the Jordan and enter into the land. And where is this this ritual going to take place?
Up near Shechem, up in the mountains.
Okay, near Shechem.
Yeah.
Specifically where?
In a valley. Between
so we have 2 mountains. We have Mount Griezim and Mount Eival. Okay, so and this is not the first time that this is referenced in Sefer Devarim. Earlier on in chapter 11, we read, I'll read the Hebrew, you can follow in the English on the screen. When you come to the land which God has promised you to inherit it, you should place the blessing on Mount Griezim and the curse on Mount Eival. And it gives the geographic location where this is. There's a big problem with this. There's a few interesting features about this description, but one major problem, one major question that is raised by all the commentators, everyone who focuses on this, and that's what. Let's go down to our map. Let's go to the second map. I think it's clearer there. Can you see my mouse if I move my mouse?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we know that they cross the Jordan River and they come to Jericho, right?
Sure.
Now, Anne, where did you say that this is going to take place?
In the hill country, so a little bit up in the north, sort of.
Okay, Shechem, over here. From Jericho to Shechem is not such a short journey, right? If this is supposed to take place on the day in which they cross, how are they going to get from Jericho to Mount Griezim and Mount Eival?
Overland.
Yeah, but it's mountainous land. It's not such an easy journey either.
It's not such an easy journey. Remember how big this nation is that's traveling, right?
Yeah.
And we know that as soon as they come in, they encounter war, right? Whether that's resistance or whether that, how much of that is resistance and how much of that is them starting the attack in order to conquer the land. It's probably a little bit of both, but it's not going to be easy passing, right? No one's going to just let them trod through on their way to these mountains. So that's the major question: is how is it possible that this ceremony is going to take place at Mount Griezim and Mount Eival? There's a second interesting detail that we'll come to a bit later on, and that is the division of the tribes. Right, so Moshe tells us in verses 12 and 13 which tribes are going to be receiving the blessing on Mount Griezim and which ones are going to receive the curses on Mount Eival. Anything strike you as interesting in the listing of these tribes?
It's like the favored sons versus the I don't know what, the Kapara Hindle sons.
Okay,
the A team as opposed to the B list.
Okay, so that certainly is one theory, not exactly though.
Right, with the exception of Ruvain, but Ruvain has had issues, and that Yosef was that Yaakov was not happy about because he should have spoken up and he didn't. He was sort of the go along and get along guy, and he was the firstborn. He should have been more of a leader.
Okay.
And Issachar is part of the favored team, but wasn't Issachar the Torah learning tribe? Issachar and Zvulun, they had a.
No, Issachar was the merchant. Zvulun was the.
Oh, Zvulun was the Torah learning tribe.
Yeah. Okay, so
no, the opposite. Issachar is the tribe that pays attention to the constellations.
My
of
verse.
the moon.
Yeah.
Also.
Yisachar.
Right.
Sorry. Zvulun v'Tetecha. Yeah. So there's many attempts to explain how they're divided, and you picked up on even Ezra's attempt, who says that it's basically the blessing tribes are the sons of Rachel and Leah. However, there's a problem because there were 8 sons if you add the 6 of Leah and the 2 of Rachel. So then you're not getting an even division. So then there's 2 of Leah's sons that get placed onto Har Eival. And Ruvain, either because he didn't own up to his responsibilities or because of whatever happened with him and Bilhah. So there's different ways that they try to explain it. So how they're divided is one interesting question. There's another really interesting phenomenon here. I'm wondering if anyone read closely which tribes are listed.
Well, population of the tribes be about equal?
Okay, so we'll see that's another suggestion that's made. That maybe this division led to kind of an even split of the number of people on each mountain. We'll get there. But of the tribes mentioned, it's very interesting because we have on Mount Griezim receiving the blessing, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, Ubinyamin. Normally, at this point in Jewish history, when we're listing the tribes, Yosef is not included in that list, right? How do we represent Yosef?
Menashe and Ephraim.
With Menashe and Ephraim. Yet Yosef is the one who's listed. It's not Menashe and Ephraim, right? And furthermore, right, oftentimes Shevet Levi is kind of separate because their role is in the Beis Hamikdash, their role is in teaching. They don't have, they're not inheriting land. So, so the fact that Levi is included in this list of 12 with Yosef is quite striking. We'll come there a little bit further on in this year. Are any other questions or initial thoughts as we look at this passage? Any details that you don't quite make sense?
Well, there's a balance also of those who are particularly known to be good warriors. Yehuda and Shimon are on the mountains,
right,
for Gerizim, but we have Gad and Asher and Dan on the other one. So, that.
Okay,
that's
so maybe it's kind of a stronger versus weaker tribes.
Right, it's a combination in both cases. So I think that's good.
Okay.
That makes sense to me. But I don't think there's such a problem with the tribe of Levi. Those who are too young or too old to serve in the Beis Hamikdash would be represented there, and the other Levis are down in the valley. So,
okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
Not so hard. No.
Fair enough.
Why is it necessary to divide them up at all in this way? I mean, it's just like, okay, have you guys go one place and have in the other, or maybe everybody in a certain place. And I mean, I don't know. I just find this, I've always found this very upsetting. It's like
What's the reason for this?
some people have to be the scapegoats, it seems like.
Yeah. Right. It doesn't seem fair, right? If you're in the tribe that's sent to our Eival to receive the curses, that seems like you're getting the shorter end of the stick in this ceremony. Most assume, though, that this is kind of a package deal, that the blessings and the curses go together, and so it's all about the nation coming together for the totality. But it's still, it does strike a bad chord for those tribes on the curse side of the mountains. All right, so those are our two basic questions. Question number one is the geography. How is it possible that Moshe is telling them to go to Har Griezim and Har Eival for this ceremony on the day they cross the Jordan, when they seem to be very far away from where the nation crossed? There is no way to cross the Jordan and go straight there. And where they actually do cross, it's not very close. So that's question number one. And then the second question is the division of the tribes. Okay. We'll skip down to source number 4, which is Joshua. What's fascinating here is that we actually see when this takes place in real life, right? It's not just something that Moshe says, this is what you should do, but we actually see when it happens. So we're in Joshua chapter 8. For those who need a refresher in Joshua, so Joshua opens and he sends the spies to Jericho, and then the nation crosses the river, very elaborate ceremony. The water split for them. They come to Jericho, and we all know they circle the city 7 days, one time each day, and then the walls come tumbling down on the 7th day. They defeat Jericho, then they go and they fight against Ai. And this is right after they have defeated the nation of Ai. Okay, chapter 8. So after defeating Ai, Joshua built an altar to God on Har Eival. Kasher tziva Moshe Eved Hashem b'nei Yisrael kakatuv b'sefer Torah Moshe mizbeach avanim shleimot asher lo hiniv aleim barzel vayu alav olot l'Hashem v'yizbachu shlamim. Just as Moshe had commanded, it actually gives a direct quote from Sefer Devarim, an altar made of whole stones that were not cut with any metal, and they offered the sacrifices. Vayichtov sham al avanim et Mishneh Torah Moshe asher katav b'fnei bnei Yisrael. He writes on these stones the Mishnah Torah, presumably Sefer Devarim, which Moshe had written for Bnei Yisrael. V'chol Yisrael uzkenav v'shotrim v'shoftav omdim mizeh umizeh la'aron neged ha'kohanim ha'levim nosei Aaron brit Hashem ka'ger ka'ezra chetzio el mol har Griezim v'chetzio el mol har Eival. Kasher tzivah Moshe Eved Hashem levarich et ha'am Yisrael b'rishonah. Half the nation and its elders and its officers and its judges stood opposite each other on one side, right? Half of the nation on one side of the ark, half on the other, with the Kohanim and the Levim in the middle, just as Moshe had commanded them. Joshua read, or maybe it was the Kohanim, it's not clear who read, but they read the Torah and the bracha and the curses, as was written in the Torah that Moshe gave them. Joshua did not leave out any detail from what Moshe had previously given them. The entire nation was there, women, children, strangers, converts, everyone who was with them. Okay, so we have the unfolding of this ceremony, right? Just as Moshe described it is what Joshua did. So does Joshua follow everything that Moshe says to do?
Was it on the first day?
Was it on
Before
the first
anything?
day? No, because they already fought 2 battles. Right? If you remember, they had to fight Ai twice, because the first time they lost because Achan had taken from the spoils of Jericho, so they had to fight Ai a second time. So no, it was not the first day. And that's the most glaring detail, the most glaring discrepancy between what Joshua does and what Moshe commanded. So there's some who want to say, well, Joshua did the best he could. You know, it was impossible to go straight to Har Griezim and Har Eival without fighting, you know, whether it was to establish their strength, so the other cities that they passed through would not want to mess with them, or because Jericho and Ai were stronger. For whatever reasons, they couldn't not fight those 2 first battles. But that fundamentally he wanted to go as quickly as possible, and it was just kind of logistics that prevented it. But it's definitely not on the first day.
Yeah, Yeshua has boots on the ground. Moshe just took a quick cursory look. He was never there, so he couldn't.
Right, so maybe he didn't realize the geography, maybe. So it does beg the question, though, why specifically this location?
Yeah.
Why these 2 mountains? It's not possible to cross the Jordan and get there immediately. So why would Moshe say to do it on the first day? And why does it have to specifically be there?
Yerushalayim might be an alternative target, except it's not part of Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as the geography is supposed to go.
Yeah, so let's go back to this map, right? We would think Jerusalem would be the logical place to do this ceremony. But again, so here's Jericho. Where's Jerusalem?
South.
It's even a little bit more south, right? And our action is taking place to the north. So Jerusalem, as logical as a choice as it might be, we know it's not conquered until the days of David, right? It's not. So it's not a possibility. But absent of Jerusalem, what would be your next best guess for where such a ceremony might take place?
Shiloh?
Shiloh. What happens in Shiloh?
There was what is it? I'm blanking on the word.
The Mishkan.
Um,
you
A
mean?
temporary
Mishkan.
capital?
Yeah, Shiloh is where they put the Mishkan, right? Until Jerusalem was conquered.
Right.
So, and it's a lot, it's closer than Shechem. It's it's on the way to where they were going. And if Shiloh is going to become the capital for many hundreds of years, that would seem like a good place to do this ceremony.
Still closer is Beit El.
Closer is Beit El.
And the name already suggests that it's a special
Yeah.
location.
Yeah. So
it has to be
why specifically Har Griezm and Har Eival?
Because it has to do with the story of Yosef, I think. And to have a unity of all of the tribes together in a place where there was a drastic disunity is a way of healing all of that and starting over again.
Okay, so Anne is a few steps ahead of me here, but beautiful. So
Thank you. I mean, it occurred to me. I didn't think about it before, but
if
the
we
way you
look,
set it up,
right, if we
became
look,
apparent.
here's Har Griezim and here's Har Eival, and right in the middle is Shechem. Okay, Shechem is in between, right? And we can actually, I've never done it, but as I mentioned at the top of the source sheet, there's two. I was still in my driving mode as I was preparing this, so I listened to a couple of audio shiurim on the parsha, and so Rabbi Yitzchak Et Shalom describes being on Har, which one? I believe Har Griezim we can still go to safely, and that is where the Samaritan community lives, and you can actually go there and see them, and it's right at the city of Shechem, overlooking Kever Yosef, overlooking Joseph's grave, Joseph's tomb. You can actually see this you can see it, and so Shechem is of significance for many reasons, but the most relevant for us is, let's go up to source number 12.
We're in
Parshat, right back in Sefer Breshit, Parshat Vayeshev. Vayelchu achav lirot et son avihem b'Shechem. Right, just as remember, Parshat Vayeshev opens that Jacob is settled. Rashi tells us he wants to live out the end of his life in peace and quiet, and then all the drama with Yosef and the brothers takes place, and there is no peace and quiet for Yaakov for the rest of his life. So, right, but before any of this unfolds, we're told that the brothers go to shepherd the sheep in Shechem. Vayomer Yisrael al Yosef alo achecha ro'im b'Shechem lecha v'eshalchacha alehem vayomer lo hinei. So Yaakov, who here is identified as Yisrael and by the name Yisrael, not the name Yaakov, says to Joseph, "Your brothers are shepherding in Shechem. Go and see how they're doing." Vayomer lo lechna re'ei et shlom achecha ve'et shlom hatzon v'ashiveni davar. Right, so he says, "Go see how your brothers are doing and how the sheep are doing." But he sent him from Hebron, and Joseph goes to Shechem. So Shechem is where the drama with the brothers and Yosef unfolds. And one very prominent suggestion about why specifically Moshe wants them to go through this ceremony in Shechem is as sort of a tikkun to what had transpired there previously, as a way to making amends and saying, as we're settling the land permanently, we commit to never do the same atrocity, the same infighting among ourselves that had taken place previously. So it has to specifically be in Shechem. And for that reason, right, many say, that is why specifically the tribe of Yosef is identified as those who are on the mountain. Right, that we want to make sure that we are getting the point that it's the reason it's taking place where it's taking place is because of what happened with Yosef. So that's why Shevet Yosef is identified and not the tribes of Menashe and Ephraim. They're subsumed under Yosef here, but it's to drive home the point that we're trying to make amends for what happened with Yosef.
There's another event that occurred in that area, the annihilation of the population in Shechem,
right,
by Shimon and Levi.
Yeah, Yeah, so right, whether that's included here, that's a totally separate explanation or reason, you know, it certainly resonates, right? That the rape of Dinah and then the war that Shimon and Levi wage against them. So it might also be that this is addressing that as well. I don't have that quite as fleshed out, but there are those who point in that direction, that we, you know, as they're settling the land, it's whether, you know, to live peacefully with the neighbors, whether to, you know, kind of bring back that historical event as a reminder. That certainly is another theory of what's going on. And one more historical connection that many point to. We're going to go to source 11. We're kind of working backwards as we jump to the end of this year, but that's fine. Right, when Hashem first appears to Abraham and tells him, go to the land that I will show you, where is it that Abraham goes? Vayelech Avram, in verse number 4, source 11, verse 4. Vayelech Avram kasher diber elav Hashem, vayelech itolot, v'Avram ben chamesh shanim v'shivim shana b'tzidjon mecharan. So Avram goes, he listens to God, Lot goes with him. Avram is 75. Go down to verse number 6. Vayavor Avram ba'aretz ad mekom Shechem. Ad Elon Morev, Aknani Az Ba'aretz. The first place that Avram comes to when he reaches the land that God tells him to go to is Shechem. So, right, and then take it one step further. When Yaakov returns from his temporary exile in the house of Lavan, he returns to the land. Where does he come to?
Shechem.
He comes to Shechem also. So Shechem might be, right, specifically Shechem as the place where these two mountains meet, might be a way of kind of retracing the steps of Abraham and Yaakov, right? That might be why Moshe, despite the geographical complications, said specifically it has to take place over here, because as you go to conquer the land permanently, I want you to relive the experience, retrace the steps of Abraham and Yaakov when they came to the land previously. So that might be another thing that's going on here. Any questions or thoughts on that?
The alternation of the holy names is so interesting too. The one that the altar that Avraham Avinu built is the name Hashem,
right?
Whereas in the Akedah, there's a combination of the two names over the course of that narrative. But here, and Yaakov uses the name of judgment, Kelohe Israel.
Yeah.
So it's like saying it's a place both of mercy and of judgment, which is exactly what this is a ceremony of.
Oh, nice. Okay, beautiful. That's a great observation. One more really cool fact about this place, okay, specifically this place, is it might be the place that is best suited for such a ceremony as we know what the ceremony was. Okay, so this I'm in source number 10 now, and this is a shiur that was posted online from Professor Elitzor. The full reference is on the first time I quoted in the source sheet, but he's quoting a Christian biblical scholar, Henry Baker Tristram, 19th century. Okay. Tristram toured the land and studied its sites, focusing specifically on their flora and fauna about 150 years ago. He scaled Mount Griezm, reaching its peak on December 21st, 1863. According to Tristram, Mount Griezm was chosen for the blessing and curse ceremony, and later as the site where Yotam delivered his parable, because of the unique acoustic effect created by the two tall mountains that enclose the Shechem Valley. Tristram writes, "A single voice might be heard by many thousands, shut in and conveyed up and down by the enclosing hills. In the early morning, we could not only see from Griezm a man driving his ass down a path on Mount Eival, but could hear every word he uttered as he urged it on. In order to test the matter more certainly on a subsequent occasion, two of our party stationed themselves on opposite sides of the valley and with perfect ease recited the commandments antiphonally. I do not know what inspired Tristram's companions to recite the 10 Commandments specifically for this test. The key point here is the technical appropriateness of the location for its purpose. As Tristram states, it is impossible to conceive a spot more admirably adapted for the purpose than this one. It is interesting to note that Eusebius, the Greek bishop of Caesarea around 320 CE, believed that Mount Griezm and Mount Eival near Shechem are not the actual mountains in question, since they are not able to hear one another when calling out from one. Tristram's test and my own personal experience, as well as that of many others, seem to belie this statement. Okay, so there's a unique geographic feature of these two mountains that make it conducive for an entire nation to stand and hear what's being said in the middle, right? Not so easy before you have sound systems and microphones and all that. So it's a natural amphitheater of some sort. And so many say that it specifically was that location. That's the only location where such a ceremony could take place. Right, putting aside the technical question, or not putting aside, but despite the technical question of the geographic complication it creates for Moshe's instructions, there's something very cool about this being the case. And many say that this is, this is confirmed by many who have been at this site and have heard the projection of sound for miles and miles. So it could be that it was, add to that all the other symbolism of what was going on here, and it becomes a very rich, symbolically rich ceremony with many layers of understanding of what's going on there.
I'm a little skeptical. It's fine if it's a quiet environment, but with that many people around, people are incapable of being absolutely quiet. They'd be shushking into each other, coughing, sneezing, whatever, and it wouldn't have been so silent, but there may be something to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it raises the question all the times that Moshe addresses the nation throughout Chumash, how did they hear him?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that. And how do they keep quiet? I don't quite know that either. But it is cool when you have sort of the archaeological support for what the Torah is describing. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
There was an article in a journal called Biblical Archaeology, the Biblical Archaeologist Review, I think was the title of it anyway, many years ago. It was about 25 years ago. But there were some people who did some digging around there, and they did find enormous stones there. And they were undressed stones. And then the war came up, one of the wars came along, and they came back and they couldn't find them, and that kind of thing. But they were very excited about it. They thought that they had found some of the types of stones that had been used to build an altar. They could tell that they were together and all that kind of thing.
Right. There was also an archaeological discovery right after 1967, when this territory was captured by Israel, and the assumption was that it would quickly be returned as part of a peace agreement that never came. The one thing that Israel did do was rush out all of its archaeologists to survey this newly conquered land. Apparently, there was an altar discovered on Mount Griezm, somewhere in the vicinity.
Yep. That's right.
Which confirm, which is further support that this actually did happen. So it's these things. It's a little bit. It's a loaded gun, because oftentimes archaeological evidence contradicts what the Torah tells us, and it's very tempting to tell those times when it's supported, but ignoring the times when it's contradictory is a little bit disingenuous. So so how but anyway, this is one of those times when the archaeology and the Torah seem to be lock in step with each other, and so I thought that would be a fun thing to point out. I just want to quickly rush through. We kind of with the geographical challenge, Chazal were sensitive to this. And so if we go back now to page, to source number 5, at the very bottom, which is Rashi's comment on this section from Joshua that we read. So Rashi says, and I think this Rashi might be missing a word, Az Yivneh, right, that it says, then Joshua built the altar. Parsha Zuk Tuva Mukdam Umuchar, Shemayom She'avru et Hayarden Asaki. Says that this is out of chronological order. That really Joshua built this altar on the day in which they crossed the Jordan, in order to correspond exactly with Moshe's command. And the Radak says the exact same thing. And we see the same thing kind of playing itself out both in the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. The ceremony is discussed in Masechet Sota. Let me just try to find the key line in the Bavli, in the Babylonian Talmud. Okay, we'll skip the Bavli and just go to the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi, show the English on our screen. Elohim be'ever hayardin min hayardin lahalan, right? So it says that Mount Griezm and Mount Eival are across the Jordan, right? Meaning not exactly in the Jordan Valley, but past the Jordan River. Acharei derech mavo hashemesh makom shechama zarachat. Be'eretz Okay, Eretz Eitel Elonei Moreh. It's described as being opposite or nearby to Elonei Moreh. Zehar Griezim v'Har Eival Shabein Hakutim. This refers to Mount Griezim and Mount Eival, which is among or between where the Samaritans live. Divrei Rebbe Yehuda. Right, so that's the area in Shechem that in modern day Israel as well. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ein Zeh Har Griezim v'Har Eival Shel Kutim. Rabbi Eliezer says it's not the Mount Griezim and Mount Eival of the Samaritans that we know to be near Shechem. Shne'amar Elohim me'ever hayardin min hayardin lahalan, because it says that it's opposite the Jordan River, and Shechem is nowhere near the Jordan River. Ma mekayim Rabbi Eliezer Har Griezim v'Har Eival. So how does Rabbi Eliezer make sense of the description that it has to take place at Mount Griezim and Mount Eival? Shtei gushbash gavshushiot asu v'karu zehar Griezim v'zehar Eival. Says they just, after they crossed the Jordan, they made 2 mounds of dirt. They called one of them Mount Griezim and one of them Mount Eival. That's how they were able to do the ceremony on the first day in which they crossed. And so what about Rabbi Yehuda, who says, no, it's the same Mount Griezim and Mount Eival that we identified it today? Says it was a miracle that they traveled 120 mil, right, this significant distance, I think it's about 60 kilometers, on that same day that they crossed the Jordan. Okay, even more extreme, if we go one page further in the Yerushalmi, he says that this ceremony took place after 14 years. Why 14 years? Sheva Shekivshu, you can still see it. Sheva Shekivshu v'Sheva Shechilku. It took them 7 years of conquest, and then another 7 years to divide up the land and let everyone to be settled. So according to him, the brachot, the ceremony of the blessings and the curses was said only after 14 years.
42.
All right.
So
we see that Chazal were struggling with these very same questions that we were as well, that geographically it doesn't make any sense, despite the great geographic and geologic advantages of doing this ceremony in Shechem on Mount Griezim and Mount Eival as we know them to be. It doesn't quite match up with Moshe's instructions to do it on the day that they cross the Jordan. So everyone has to sort of contend with this. We'll just conclude one more explanation about why this is taking place. This is from Rabbi Menachem Liebtag. What was the purpose of this commandment? If it was simply to teach the laws once again, right? The entire nation had just studied them only a few months earlier with Moshe at Arvot Moab. Why the need to study them once again? Why the need for another ceremony? One could suggest that it is specifically because Moshe is no longer with them. Yeshua is now their leader. Specifically because they are no longer in the desert, they are now in the promised land, that it's important to conduct the ceremony on Har Eival. Let's explain why. Even though the purpose of the desert experience was to prepare Bnei Yisrael for life in Eretz Canaan, once they would enter the land, their lifestyle would be very different. Instead of being able to rely on God for their food and water, the nation would now need to take care of their own physical needs. Similarly, their study of Torah will no longer be solely for Moshe Rabbeinu. Now they will all be living in close proximity to the Mishkan, nor will they be living in close proximity to the Mishkan. Yeshua will be their new leader, but the responsibility of Torah study now falls upon the shoulders of the people and their tribal leaders. And it was for this reason that God set aside Shevet Levi, an entire tribe dedicated to the service of God and teaching his Torah. Okay, so it was some way to
You would say that.
to concretize the Torah's message as they were preparing for life, like quote normal life in the land. And he offers a few more explanations, but let's just one more thing I wanted to point out, and this is the other map that's on the source sheet. And this is back to the question of the division of the tribes. And it might be helpful. Well, I can't even get this map on the screen totally. Okay. So if you look at this map along with the list of which tribes are on which mountain. So the suggestion was made, and you'll tell me if you buy it or not. So which nations are on Mount Griezm? I'll read it to you, and you can try to locate where their land is on the map. Shimon, it's down here. Levi doesn't have land. Yehuda over here. Yisachar. There's Yisachar.
Up in the north, towards the north, towards the north, above Megiddo,
I'm not seeing Yisachar. Oh, here's Yisachar.
between.
Yisachar's in the north. Yosef is going to be with Menashe and Ephraim. And Binyamin is over here. And then who's on Har Eival? It is Reuven over here. Gad over here. Asher up here. Zvulun right there. Dan should be right over here.
Down and up.
Naphtali. And okay, so those ones. The suggestion was made, and it doesn't quite fit exactly, that not only is Shechem an appropriate place because of the historical events that took place there and because of the geology that allows for the natural amphitheater, but also Shechem is kind of center of ancient Israel. Right? Again, we would have thought intuitively that it would be Jerusalem as sort of the center of the nation, but it's not. Shechem is geographically much more in the center. And so that perhaps the ceremony taking place in Shechem was a way to bring together the tribes in a central location, and that the division is more or less among geographical lines. Right? Most of the tribes in the south were on one mountain, most of the tribes in the north were on the other. Keep in mind that Reuven and Gad were over here, south of Shechem, but this is not their intended territory. Right? What happened with Reuven and Gad?
They see land for cattle.
Yeah, they made a request to live on the other side of the Jordan so they could take care of their cattle. So we don't know where their intended place was, but that that explains some of the not exact lining up. Anyway, it was a suggestion that was made. I'm not sure it totally works, but it was interesting.
And that kind of gives some substance to the rabbi who said it was after 14 years.
Uh-huh.
By that time, they would have all been spread out, and
Right, and they would have known where they were coming from, and
yeah. Need a central place for everyone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's basically what I have on this. I like these from time to time to kind of look at both how what's described in Chumash plays out later on in Nach, and also, as I said, when the archaeological evidence does support it, it's kind of fun, but it is recognizing that it's a little bit disingenuous because we don't point out all the times that archaeology contradicts what the Torah says, and there are plenty of those times as well. But anyway, I had some fun putting this one together. I hope that you enjoyed delving into it with me. Are there any final thoughts or questions on this?
Well, the Blessing Mountain is to the south,
Mm-hmm.
and the Curse Mountain is to the north.
Yeah.
And that's just so striking when you think that the tribes in the north were taken off first, and
Yeah.
the others, the blessing ones. And there's also the mention of south being a direction of blessing, and the north is the place from which troubles come, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also such a strong attempt, from looking at the map, one can think that the tribes of Yosef, with one of them more to the south and the other one more to the north, are really trying to hold things together too in their own way. I think of it that way, they were trying to. And Yisachar, is that not the place where where's Tzfat vis-a-vis there? Let's see, where's Tzfat on the map? I was trying to think
around here.
That is on the Gal.
Oh, it's even further north, right? Here's the.
it's further north,
Kinneret.
yeah. It's above the Kinneret.
It's
isn't
overlooking.
It's above the Kinneret, yeah.
Yeah.
It's to the
But it
north.
is very close nearby Mount Tabor, which is perhaps a good place to look at the stars. That's what I was thinking of, that they were looking for the kind of place from which it would be good to do observations,
Uh-huh.
And the way you set the map up, it's so nice, we can get a feeling for those mountains and all.
Yeah.
Our guide in Eretz Israel, as I may have mentioned to you before, Mar Maimon, a descendant of the Rambam, set up a moshav up in these hills, and his first book, as you know, is written about the travels of the Avos and the Imahos across those mountains. And gosh, I one feels we should call him up and see what he would have to say on this subject too, because he rode horses up through there for a long time to pick the spot for the moshav, which is the Ma'ale, what is it? Ma'ale Ketoret is, I think, the name of the moshav. And Joshua's been there. He's at shul right now, I guess, still, but I wish he were here to comment on it too, to give us some idea, because he's visited it there. And he might have something to offer also about how long it took him to get from point A to point B, because he was in Ma'ale Adumim, so nearby Yerushalayim,
Right.
and Yericho actually also, and would have gone up there. And how did he get there, and how long did it take, and all that, So, but anyway, it's wonderful to touch down in the land. It's just so wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, have a good night, everybody. We will meet again. We're back in Baltimore. Looking forward to seeing everyone over Shabbos, and then again Tuesday night for this year. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Putting so many good things together.